Corporate governance and corporate compliance is all over the law recently. Whether it's MF Global or even it could be J.P. Morgan Chase, and the recent disclosures they've made. Walmart certainly has been in the news recently. Yahoo, and we could go on and on and on. There's just a long list of companies that have made the news recently for corporate governance gaffes. Why don't we talk about the Walmart situation a little bit? I mean, everyone may not know what went on there, but can you maybe give a thumbnail of what went on, and then maybe we can talk about how that affects our two disciplines?
And I guess I should qualify it by saying I and Bob only really know what's in the press, so we're going based on what's been reported so far. We don't think anything has been denied by the company, so I think we're fairly comfortable relating these things as facts. But the situation, as I understand it, is Walmart was determined to establish a presence in Mexico and expand there. In order to do that, in order to get stores built in a timely fashion, the way they're used to doing it in the United States, they would pay bribes to whoever was necessary to pay bribes to in order to get the job done. This practice of making payments was discovered by Walmart lawyers. It was reported to management, and they chose not only not to do anything about it, but to send Mexican management down to investigate themselves. And the Walmart lawyer who discovered this resigned. And we suspect that she did it because of this, but it was certainly something that seems to be in contradiction of their compliance program. Meanwhile, Walmart has a very well-developed compliance department and a separate ethics department. And both of those were operating apparently in the dark, as management and the general counsel apparently knew all about the Mexican bribery scheme, which violated the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of the United States, and chose not to do anything about it.
And what's kind of amazing to me is, certainly when you read the news stories, the news stories talk a lot about management's involvement, but at least in the stories I've seen, there's never been any discussion of the board of directors.
Right.
And that really shocks me, because setting aside compliance from a governance point of view, it seems to me there are lots of rules that were implicated here. In those instances, when you have credible evidence of potential wrongdoing, you're supposed to report that to management, and if management doesn't act in the right way, you're supposed to take it to the next level. In this case, that would have been to the board of directors. So, I'm surprised that it didn't get to the board of directors that way. And I guess the second thing that surprises me is defending the company, right? Forget about doing the right thing. If I'm mostly concerned about defending the company, I would have thought that the lawyer would have said, we have the federal sentencing guidelines that will, provide for, mitigation of the consequences if the company has in place a proper compliance program and proceeds with their investigation in the right kind of way. So I certainly would have been thinking about creating an internal investigation that would have been, frankly, aimed to the regulators. It would have been aimed to the Justice Department, it would have been aimed to the SEC, to make sure that I could establish that this wasn't company policy, that these guys were rogue folks operating in Mexico, beyond corporate policy. So it seems to me that there are lots of rules already in place that people didn't pay any attention to. So given that, do you think it would have improved things had the company had in place a compliance and ethics and compliance officer who, say, reported either directly to the board of directors or at least reported to the CEO with quarterly or annually reporting relationships with the board?
Yeah, and certainly that's where the debate is today about whether the compliance officer or the compliance department should be under the general counsel, or it should be an independent voice that could speak right to the CEO or even to the chairman or the audit committee. In this case, we don't know what the story is at Walmart, so I'd qualify it by saying that, but clearly if things were all funneled to the general counsel, the general counsel made the decision to not report it, then there was a failure of their corporate governance structure, because there was clear wrongdoing that will get the company into deep trouble and wasn't acted upon. And in fact, if you look at the drop of the stock after this was revealed, it was probably close to $18 billion of market cap that was lost when this was revealed. And it's going to take a long time to earn that back, even if the Mexican business does very well. So there are a lot of elements here that really are troublesome, particularly since Walmart is such a well-managed company in every other respect. For example, the argument would be, okay, I'm operating in a foreign country, it's the local custom to make these payments. How can I go beyond that? We'll never succeed. And in fact, that's true in many countries where it is customary to make payments, large or small, to get things done, but big companies can say no. Walmart could have said to a mayor of a town where they wanted to put a store, so we're not going to pay the bribe. If you insist on it, we'll go next door to the next town where they won't require us to pay the bribe. So Walmart could have stood up to it. A small company it might be more of a discussion because they wouldn't have the ability to do it. But from a business management standpoint, Walmart could have stood tall and said no. So it concerns me because you think, okay, now going all the way up to the chairman, what message was each operation given about the obligation to follow the law? And the second question is, was the board ever involved in this at all? Were they aware of what's going on in Mexico? Were they aware of the whole Walmart compliance program? As you mentioned, the federal sentencing guidelines talk about the obligation of the board of directors to ultimately be responsible for compliance. Also, Delaware law says the same thing from the Caremark decision, and yet we see so far no indication that the board was ever aware of this or otherwise involved, and that's troubling because the business controls, the corporate governance there, doesn't seem to have worked, and it's weird because so many other things Walmart does so well. They figured out how to advertise, how to distribute, how to use information technology better than any other retailer. All those things they do so well, and here they had this failure.
So put yourself in the management suite, at the time that the disclosures regarding the payments in Mexico were going on. I mean, now we're certainly in an environment where the Justice Department and the SEC have become pretty aggressive regarding the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. But if you go back, I think this was about 5 or 6 years ago, if you go back 5 or 6 years, they were less aggressive. And in fact, I think kind of in that same time frame, Tyson's Foods had just gotten a little slap on the wrist because of a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act violation. Do you think it's conceivable that the company looked and said that, if we brush this off, there's not going to be a serious consequence? Or, what do you think's happening in the board?
I think that's certainly conceivable, that they thought that it would be a minor problem, but that to me is more motivation to reveal it and deal with it right away. One of the lessons that every corporation should know is that things don't stay secret. It was bound to come out sooner or later, and maybe they thought that no one would find out. I mean, we don't know what the conversations were, but nowadays with whistleblower laws, with the incentives built in the sentencing guidelines to cooperate with the government and provide information, with every employee being on some sort of social networking site, it's really naive to think that anything that goes on is going to stay secret for very long. So from a corporate management standpoint, everyone says that when you want to control a problem, you get out ahead of it. And so if they had thought about it, they said, okay, here's a problem in Mexico, we have to manage it. If it gets out to the public without us being able to control it, it's going to damage us. Sort of the same way that things got out regarding News Corporation. Things got out, they didn't control it, and it just spun out of control.
So, I guess the takeaway from this is that while, the classes that we teach are both certainly based in the law, it seems to me that what we're really talking about in a lot of instances are business processes,
Yeah.
and making sure that the companies are putting in the proper business processes that will allow them to operate for the benefit of their shareholders, and certainly that would also involve compliance with law.
Absolutely.